I actually just made a video, but I have decided it's time to make another video because as soon as I uploaded that last one, ran face first right into another thing it's driving me nuts. And I don't think I'm the only one. And it's actually in the description of my channel, detailed. And that is the assumption that you need to be in the know, at least in some capacity, about what you're trying to do, trying to learn, trying to buy, that sort of thing. It's really tough when you've got to spend money on whatever this is and you're trying to make the best decision. Should I buy option A or option B? Well, based on their differences, here's their differences. And these differences were given to you are assuming you know something else about the product where you can apply that knowledge to pick those differences. It's the stupidest assumption ever. So, that said, I'm going to do this understanding that it just opens me up for everybody to come after me on here. I don't really care because I gotta think that in my head, I'm kind of speaking for the silent majority here. Because there's more casual people in the world that know a little bit about some things and yet still somehow don't know enough about other things, especially when it comes to stuff you got to spend money on, like a computer. You're going to go into some overpriced place and ask them what computer they think you should buy based on your day-to-day activity. And they're going to hit you with a whole bunch of crap and jargon that you don't understand. Might as well be speaking a dead language to you. If you're anything like me, you know just enough about computers to where when they start speaking that dead language to you, you're probably going to get yourself into trouble. And that's the bad thing. It's the double-edged sword. And then the flip side to that, which creates a different problem, is if you ask these questions to these people, especially if they're young. No offense, youngins, but you guys are assholes. You look back after you've been asked the question like I'm an idiot. And it's not I'm an idiot. I don't use computers much. I buy one because the world has dictated that I need to have one to achieve some things I need to do in my house. So that brings me to content creators on here. And I gotta say, all the content creators that I'm subscribed to on here, I absolutely love. But what I hate about their channels is that they'll tell me something or they'll explain something, and then I gotta go Google just to start. I get 2 minutes into a video by somebody, and I'm like, well, I don't know what that means. So I'm Googling it. And in Googling it, it gives me 10 more things to Google. And then in Googling those 10 things, I kind of forgot what I was doing in the first place. And at this point, is it even worth the effort? Just an example. And I know anybody that watches this that games is going to just tear me apart in the comments. I like to game. I like to repair game consoles. I like my phone, and I like to repair phones. But just because I know how to fix one does not mean that I know the entire vocabulary of describing what I'm seeing on TV as far as what it's doing. So, for example, I still don't know what the hell a sprite is. When I'm playing a video game or when I'm watching somebody's video game review and they're like, oh, look at the sprites. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, I got the knockoff Kroger brand. I don't really buy Coca-Cola products because they're overpriced. And then they start pointing stuff out about it, and, well, I don't know what that is. So, what do? I go look up Sprite. Well, after spending 20 minutes thumbing down on my phone through all the advertisements for soda and all the other things about soda, I finally get to a very bad description of what a Sprite is, and all that description left me with is, I know enough to be wrong about what that is. Still don't know for sure. And I'm sure it has a very, very simple way of explaining what it is that people just refuse to put the simple explanation out there. And that's what drives me nuts, is if there's a simple way to explain something, that should be the way. There shouldn't be a long, drawn-out way to explain it unless you want more detail. But page 1, paragraph 1, sentence 1, beginning should be, this is what you're looking up, this is the simple explanation, flip to page 2, and we'll get completely complicated. Boom. Done. Easy. Simple. To the point. So, it's not completely the content creator's fault, because they got to keep this stuff entertaining. A lot of them are monetized, which, good for you. And with the attention span being measured in tick turds anymore, if your average person, we've kind of forgot about the lay people, or the casual people. And the odds are, when you consider the fact that not everybody knows everything about everything, there are more casual people than there are hardcore insert subject. There's more casual gamers than there are hardcore gamers. There's more people that don't know how to repair or the inner workings of a TV than people that do. There are people out there like me that cannot tell you what I'm looking at right now on this piece of crap phone I have, but can still swap the screen, the motherboard, GPS antenna, and so on. That stuff's actually simple. But all the crap surrounded my 1080 freaking whatever camera screen megapixel crazy nonsense that they refuse to explain other than giving you those stupid words I just spoke. What do you do? Where do you turn? The instruction manuals don't even exist anymore. Even like a piece of furniture from IKEA. What happened to insert peg 1 into hole A? With the way these people do furniture instructions, you'd be hard-pressed to get the furniture together without a picture, which is where, to me, a problem comes in. The literature should explain the item. Plain and simple. So now, not only do you rarely, if ever, get an instruction manual, when you do, it sucks. It's terrible. And I don't know who okayed it, but they didn't ask me first. But when did they start taking the parts breakdowns with the parts numbers out of the manuals? If you make a product, it should have an IPB. And for all of those of you who don't know what that is, it's Illustrated Parts Breakdown. It's the greatest thing to ever happen to instruction manuals, and somehow we've destroyed it. Why, I don't know. And then you go to find them online and you can't get an instruction manual. You get a guide. And that guide is worthless. And then underneath it, it'll say something like user manual. And that user manual is worthless with most things. And then you might get an illustration of the parts. But there's still the possibility, actually likelihood anymore, that it will not have the part numbers. Sizes. That's a big one, especially anybody like me who does their own car maintenance, and you go to break down, say, a caliper on, let's say, a 2013 Ford Edge. And say a bolt fell out. You don't have it. What do? You either call Ford and mortgage an arm and a leg to get a bolt, because God forbid you be able to go to Home Depot, buy the exact same bolt without the F on it for Ford stamped on the head. But they don't give you a size. So is it a fine thread? Is it an aggressive thread? Is it a grade 8? Is it half a neck? Is it fully threaded? Is there a torque? Where did torques go? I did a job interview with a place that fixed cars, and I would love to put the name on here so everybody could stay away after what I was told. But it was actually a car lot. And when I told the guy that I had all the tools, I just wasn't going to bring my torque wrenches in. He goes, "That's all right. We don't really use them." On my car, you don't use them. So when I replace a head gasket, it's just, snug plus a quarter. Best of luck to you, ma'am. You had oil, now you don't. I wonder why. Anyway, everything, especially now, is more technical than it's ever been. It has to be in spec. But there's no explanation of those specs. There's nowhere to go to find those specs. And the few places that do it, if you look and compare them to when you might have looked 5-10 years ago, it's extremely lacking now. And that's not okay. Especially when we revisit the very beginning of this video where I said not everybody knows everything about everything. Some people need the simplest parts of this procedure broke down. And there's nothing wrong with that. Anybody on the planet should be able to get into a manual and do everything themselves. And when I look around and see how many people can't even stack a Whopper or something a little more difficult like, say, a Big Mac, I would normally blame that person or their parents. But when I look around and see that there's no guidance anymore. You can't even be self-sufficient if you want to. What do you do? Where do you go? Well, anytime I post anything, if anybody has the answers, I always will encourage you to put those answers in the bottom, in the suggestions, in the comment section. There. I just use as many words as I can think of off the hip to describe an area of YouTube you may not be familiar with. But you look around, you see everything, it's getting more difficult. I would think that more difficult would be more explanation. And like I said, content creators, especially on YouTube, you have become the user manual for everything. You ask any kid with a smartphone where they go to learn whatever, and it's almost always YouTube. That's a great tool to have, but it's not a great tool to have when you're missing parts of the explanation. So all I would do is just encourage anyone that has a YouTube channel where they explain everything. Do not assume that people know what you're talking about at an intermediate level. You've got to go fully beginner if you're going to explain anything. And I kind of back off of the people that just review stuff, because realistically, if you're there for a review, odds are you do know a little bit about it because you knew enough to look it up. But at the same time, I'd still say it's probably a good thing to break things down as Barney style as humanly possible, to the point that there can be no question whatsoever. Get your community involved. Everybody I subscribe to has a ton of subscribers, to include me. And I love getting on there and answering questions to stuff that I know. But I'm also a person who's always wanting to learn the next thing. For example, this video will not be edited in any way. I will not have a cool little intro, and I have no logo, and the name I put on there is just out of being pissed off at Verizon earlier. Because I don't know how to do it. It's probably the simplest thing in the world, but I don't know how to do it. And people like that are the people that I'm trying to talk to, trying to get engaged. What don't you know? What would you like to know? What are some things that irritate you when you're trying to learn something that you're just confused when you read it? So, and this isn't to pick on anybody, this isn't to be bigoted in any way, but if English is not your first language, you probably shouldn't be writing instruction manuals. If verbs fail you, back away from the pen and let somebody else take care of it. Or at least get them to interpret it for you. And Google Translates sucks. I'm sorry, Google, your intentions are great. I think it's a fantastic idea, especially as many Japanese video games as I play. But good God, you're going to get more people in trouble. I hope nobody uses that app to hit on somebody. Because if you do, you may be sorely disappointed. You may have been better off with a joke book. Or walking around with a parrot or something to get somebody to ask you questions, because Google Translates just the worst. It's terrible. I hope to God that they make it better, but it sucks completely. Even for simple things, put "I love you" and then want to translate it to Spanish and end up ordering a burrito. Not okay. Fix your stuff before you roll it out to the public. But anyway, I will never ask for likes or subscriptions. If you feel the need to give me one, then yeah. But if not, keep scrolling. You know, if you didn't like the video, feel free to tell me. If you liked the video, feel free to tell me. Freedom. It's all yours. But anyway, like I said, to recap, simplify stuff. Simplify. Make it easy. Make it accessible. The world's complicated enough without somebody just making it worse. For what? For what reason? You know, you're going to mention a Sprite? Fine. Do a video over what Sprites are. I don't know. If you're going to try to sell me a computer at big box company, and I tell you what my agenda is with that computer, what my budget is, and you start telling me how many cores it has and the mega gigahertz, whatever the hell. I know I just combined two, but they're both on my mind. I am instantly not going to know what you're talking about. You need to pick a different approach. Use an analogy. And for those of you who don't know what analogies are, because I see that a lot of people don't use them anymore, an analogy is using something common to describe something in a simpler way. They're very simple. Now, I'm going to assume that not everybody knows exactly what that means. So it's kind of like saying, what's a good one? I can think of a lot of them, but I want a good one. I also want one to keep this family friendly, and a lot of the ones I grew up with the people I know growing up when they grew up, not okay for family, young kids, probably not okay for work even. But slicker than snot. You know, it's a kind of a crappy analogy, but, you know, it's family friendly and it gets the point across. You know, it's slick outside. How slick? Slicker than snot outside. Okay. We've all been there. You've all done a snot rocket and got it on your hand. It's gross. It's disgusting. I know, but don't be judgmental. You know you've done it, if not on accident. I've been to the bank and seen the guy with it hanging out of his nose. Nobody's immune. Everybody poops. They made a book about it. Everybody gets snot on their hand at some point. Or something else to complain about maybe in a future video. Why is it when you blow your nose, you blow a hole completely through the tissue? What good is that? I might as well just blew my nose in my hand and wiped it off with the tissue. It's a hell of a lot more efficient when you look at it from that way. But anyway, I would use the word I digress, but I'm not entirely sure I know what it means. So I will end it there, end rant. And yeah, anybody who watches this, you have a fantastic day. Happy you took the time. I appreciate it. Even if you hated it, you took the time. And there's honor in effort. So good for you.